right, make the money, but will we this year and next? Mercer's put together its annual UAE remuneration survey, and we have the Career and Workforce Products Business Leader for this region in the studio, Ted Rafoul. Lovely to see you, Ted.
Good morning.
You've surveyed more than 700 companies in the UAE and a lot more across the region. Let's start with the big number, which is pay rises. What do we see in 2024 and what do you think we're going to see this year?
We are expecting to see a pay increase of 4% at the median in the UAE. 4% at the median, meaning that not necessarily everyone's getting 4%. About half the market may be getting less than that, and about half the market may be actually getting more than that. Some may not get anything, some may get significantly more. That's what medians mean, right? But generally, from about 750 companies, we cover close to 300,000 employees in these companies, and that is the number we're seeing.
Right. And that's the number that you've also got down for the UAE in 2024. So you think that's what we've seen this year as well as what we'll see next?
Correct, yes.
We've got to take inflation into account there. We've got, with the central bank expecting to see 2.3% inflation for the UAE this year. If we look at where we are in Dubai at the moment, for the first quarter, we came in at just under 3.5%. So depending on where you live in the UAE, what you're really looking at is somewhere between sort of just over a 1.5% pay rise, maybe even less.
Absolutely. Now, there's also a lot of scrutiny around these inflation figures, right? But yes, the real pay increase is about that much. That said, what we've also seen is movement when it comes to other pay factors, such as housing allowances, schooling, etc. Housing allowances, what we've seen is actually an increase of close to 5% in the past year.
Okay, so let me just stop you there because we've got the pay, and we'll go back to that in a second, but we've moved on there already to the allowances. We've heard over and over again that companies aren't changing allowances, and yet you've got a graph showing that they are. What's happening?
We have about 20% of the companies that we surveyed that said they have increased their housing allowances. They've made adjustment to housing allowances. 20% isn't the majority of the market, but it is obviously some movement.
That's 1 in 5.
That's 1 in 5. Now, that's 1 in 5 that made changes. When you look at the statistics over the 5, so all of it, we've seen an increase of about 5% on the overall. What that means is that those 1 in 5s probably provided a slightly higher increase than 5%, well, significantly higher increase, 5%, for it to average out as a 5% increase on housing allowances across the entire market.
Is that a retention tool? Is that a recognition that the cost of living in housing is still ticking upwards? What are companies telling you?
Yeah, it's obviously all of them, right? If you're not able to pay adequately, then yes, you have issues. So it is definitely a retention tool. Obviously, there's been a lot of scrutiny around housing prices in the last couple of years, and that is certain companies may have had to react for that. Keep in mind, whenever we give these increases, both when it comes to base salary or housing allowances, this is about increases. Doesn't tell you what the baseline is, right? So you may be paying significantly below, and that's why you have to provide an increase. You may be above the market, in which case you may not need to provide as much of an increase either, right? So before taking into consideration just the growth or increase factors, it's very important that you understand and establish a baseline as to where you are actually relative to markets.
Okay. How easy is it to retain top talent at the moment?
Quite difficult. And top talent can mean different things. And that definition is also changing. We're seeing, obviously, the impact of new skills coming to the workforce, due to certain demands. We talk a lot about generative AI, automation, so that those skills related to that are in high demand and, of course, demanding big salary increases. And we've seen that in our surveys. There's also geographic pressures, in particular from Saudi Arabia, which has become a much more attractive destinations for top performers, which has had an impact on the UAE as well.
And yet, I'm looking at the salary projections for Saudi Arabia, same as the UAE, 4% for this year and only slightly higher, 4.3% for next year.
Correct. It is slightly higher, not significantly more. These figures are also across, the 750 or 300,000, or, Saudi Arabia has similar numbers when it comes to our surveys. This doesn't necessarily reflect certain key top performers, right? So the question was around top performers. You're seeing much more movements there. And in our survey, we actually collect data by individual jobs. So when we look at specific skill sets, specific jobs, we see certain jobs have much higher movements than others, and some jobs have almost no movement or even sometimes downwards movement because of an oversupply of talent or low demand for the skill set.
Okay, so where is the place to be at the moment? Who's getting the most money? Who's getting looked after for retention reasons?
There's a lot of jobs specifically around automation, digital transformation, generative AI, or setting yourself up for that future. Those jobs are typically in high demand nowadays. You'll see other jobs where maybe the impact of automation may be more severe in the future, where the demand for those jobs will be decreasing, demand for the skill set will be decreasing, and so we're seeing downwards pressure there when it comes to salaries.
Okay, where at the moment, though, are we seeing downwards pressure? Who's not necessarily feeling the love?
There's a lot of jobs that tend to be blue-collar jobs. There's a lot of jobs that are, I would say, very transactional, where you don't have much of an expertise factor or relational aspect to their jobs that are going down. You're talking jobs potentially in logistics, blue-collar jobs, potentially even from an office perspective, positions in administration, positions in things like accounting, for example, where you may not see as much of a movement.
Okay, so what actually keeps people in a job, though? Because one of the things that Rich and I have been discussing this morning that surprised us is what you've got here in terms of why people join a company and why they then stay in that company. Those two lists line up. They're pretty equal. Money comes in at number 5.
Yeah. So this list, the perspective that you may have as an employee may vary depending on your situation. And I listened to Richard earlier talking about, the teacher example. And obviously, if you are not currently paid adequately or fairly compared to the market, then pay becomes probably the most important topic. However, if you are paid fairly, then these other factors gain importance.
Okay, 20 seconds. Flexible working policy. Again, we thought that was the biggie for whether you get the top talent or not. It's not even in the top 5.
Yeah. Well, it is actually in the top 5 of where you stay in the company. If you look at it, about 31% of companies are of employees that choose to stay with their employers name it as their top reason. So it is obviously quite significant still. That said, we've seen a lot of movement recently with certain organizations also walking back on some of these flexible policies. Amazon being very, very famous with that. There are many reasons behind it, but generally still very important for certain employees.
But not to attract them, not to join.
Not typically to attract them. Attracting tends to be this is where other factors such as pay, such as reputation, but development opportunities tend to sometimes be more attractive for employees. Generally, also, when you enter a company, you want to be in the office more, you want to meet your colleagues, and that's why it's a bit less important.
Okay, Ted Rafoul, Career and Workforce Products Business Leader at MENA, for the MENA region at Mercer. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.